same question to Brian. Lessons learned from week 1 up until now.
Well, I mean, that's a large question, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. And usually those are things you get a chance to when you get to the offseason and go. So, I mean, there's a ton of them. You know, the biggest thing I think is that it's a group that's willing to work. I think it's a group that has a lot of room to improve. I think it's a group that gave us an opportunity to see some of the things that they're good at and some of the things that they're not good at, things that we need to address in the offseason. Sometimes there are things that are quick fixes. Sometimes there are things that are fixes that over the course of time. So you kind of gather all that information. You know, during bye weeks, we look at the tape of the games up to that point. So we've been able to do that twice, but then you do that again at the end of the season and kind of take a chance to sit back, look at it from a big picture, and there'll be a lot more than what I just gave you there. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
How much do the injuries affect what you can do secondary? I mean, your top cover corners out, Malik Spencer's out, and then in addition to the guys you had already on the shelf earlier in the year, just as far as what you do schematically and match up like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, first off, obviously, the expectation is for us to perform regardless of who's out there. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think anytime you put something together, you have to be mindful of who's out there and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. So there's part of that. And so when you have some situations where there's some young guys in there, you obviously don't want to overload them with too much. When you have some inexperienced guys in there, you want to put them in positions to be successful as much as possible. So the personnel obviously is always something that you're mindful of, and it's always something that's important. But you know, we got to do the best we can to put them in the best position to go out and have success.
When you look at the pressure, Joe, I'm guessing it's not up to where you want it to
No.
be. What have been the issues, I guess? How can you get that right? And have you ever seen sort of a stretch like this with?
No.
It's just the sacks. I mean, pressures are different, of course.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Usually by now, just by accident, you get one. And so it's something that's a concern, and it's something that's, talked about. I will say, I think Coach Lange and Coach Willard are doing a great job coaching the guys up front. And those two guys, and Coach Lange in particular, they're doing the right things. We just haven't seen the results right now. I think it's something where, we're looking to address it with not only the four-man rush, but with games and with pressures, and bring in different varieties of things to try to jumpstart it. I think, but then there's also the element of the things that go on in the training of the fundamentals in the offseason. And, the one thing over the years that I've kind of seen is pass rush probably more than any individual skill is developed over the course of time. You look at, it's similar to, martial arts. It's similar to those types of endeavors where, like, you got to work at that for a long period of time and before guys get really instinctive about it. So there'll be a lot of work on it in that area, but in the short term, it's, hey, working at it every day, an individual. It's addressing ways to be better, and then it's also looking to bring pressure with games and blitzes to try to get the clock going for the quarterback.
I'm guessing that's been a bit of a challenge for you too, because when you talk about young guys in the back end, you're blitzing, they're kind of exposed a little bit, or not, then maybe you're not getting anything over there.
Yeah, there's always that fine line, right, between rush and coverage, and they always work together. The better the coverage, the better the rush, the better the rush, the better the coverage. So, our guys are working at it, and, I think anytime you're in a situation where you're deficient at something and working at it, it gives you an opportunity to find ways to get better, and that's what we're working hard at now. So.
When you look at the season itself, I mean, sometimes you hope that progress, I guess, is linear. I mean, when it's not linear and you have setbacks and you guys take a step back, I mean, how difficult is that for a coach, and especially when you're trying to
it's not
players, with the new coach.
Yeah, it's not difficult to me with regard to, because improvement and development is not linear. Like, that's not real. That's fake. Like, line of success going like that's not life, right? It goes like this, right? And there's peaks and valleys. And as you go through the peaks and valleys, the goal is to be climbing the whole time. And so, I know that that's not real, and that comes with experience, right? I didn't know that when I was 19, and that's the job of the coach to try to project that message to the players, like, hey, this thing isn't going to be perfect the whole way through. And you know when you start this thing out, as you get into the season and you get into Big Ten play and there's the war of attrition, that there's going to be that part of it. It is what it is. And so I like to look at the stretch that we're in and the hard times that we're in now that are really hardening the guys for the future. You know, fortunately for me, I've been through lots of defensive turnarounds over the 24 years I've been a coach. And the thing that I know is the hard times and the struggle is what ultimately you'll see those rewards down the road for the people that are the right people. You know, because when it gets hard, the wrong people, they kind of go over here, right? And the right people kind of go over here, and then those are the backbone of your team. So I kind of, you know, you don't love that when you're in that part, but you also know, you know, I've been where it's been not where you want it, and then been top 10 in the country. And the guys who made it top 10 in the country were the guys that were in it, living in it when it was hard, and they responded the right way and grew. And then they had those scars that allowed them to be the leaders for what we needed down the road. And that's what we're in right now. So, you know, we had a good day today. And, you know, the guys were flying around, and I'm excited for this one.
Is keeping heads up like something, is that become part of the conversation too, and making sure guys' confidence stays?
Yeah, what I would say is it's not necessarily something that's talked about per se. I think the way we coach, that's just part of it all the time, right? Like, because if you start talking about this stuff when it's hard, then it's deaf message, right? It's after the fact, right? You start talking about that stuff in January. You start talking about that stuff in the spring. You start talking about that stuff in training camp. So when it does get hard, you know what? We've been talking about this for a while. Like, you know, so yes, part of it is keeping confidence up, but it's not like we're changing the approach. The approach is the approach. We've been approaching it that way from the beginning.
It seemed like against Illinois, you guys grew into the game defensively for a while there. And I'm wondering what you saw as that happened, and how much of that was you adjusting things, and where you saw it on the field get a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last couple weeks for us, the biggest thing to me has been inconsistency within the game, right? There's been a bunch of 3 and outs in the last 3 games. But then there's also been a bunch of 12, 13 play drives where, you know, we don't get a stop, right? So that tells me that there's a consistency of the execution, right? And so the middle part that you talked about where it was like, hey, there was some growth, well, that was just, to me, reflective of what it's been for the last couple games where, like, there's, you know, I think there was 3 and outs to start the Indiana game, and then they go down and score multiple times. So to me, it's consistency. So consistency of execution. So what's that? That's the effort, that's the technique, and that's the detail of the thing. So for me, there was positives in that game that you can draw from, but there's also learning moments and things we need to be better at. So I did like how we kind of got in the second half and did some really good things there, but then at the end of the game, we didn't finish the way that we needed to. So.
When you talk about growth not being linear, peaks and valleys, that's a process that takes time. I know in today's NCAA, there's not a whole lot of patience anymore with the portal and so many roster moves.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you message that sort of growth over time to guys these days compared to maybe earlier in your career.
Yeah, I think 2 things. Number one, I think you look for those types of people, growth mindset people in recruiting, right? Because sometimes, like, if you get the wrong people, it don't matter what you say, right? It doesn't. And so you want to try to recruit those types of people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that better be your messaging. And I say messaging, I don't mean it as a negative, but it better be who you are and what you believe in and how you speak it from the beginning. And so they got to believe that. So they got to trust you, right? And so, you know, I've been taught that time, consistency, and proof is how you earn trust, right? It's got to happen over a course of time. There's got to be consistency of the message, and then there's got to be some proof to what you're saying to be true. So then when the players trust you, right, then there's that buy-in. And so then they know, and if you can point out past examples of, hey, this taking some time and you working through it, and here's where this guy is, then they're like, man. You know, so, like, because I've coached some guys over the years. At the last spot I was at, Tyler Newman, when he was a first-year starter, people were saying he can't play. He wasn't good enough. But then he was the first safety taken in the draft last year and starting as a rookie. Well, everyone sees when you get drafted, oh, yeah, this is where the guy was when he got drafted. I got to see where he was when people said he wasn't good enough. Now, I happen to think he was good enough the whole time because I knew the type of person he was, I knew what his skill set was, and I knew how hard he worked. And we got a bunch of those guys now, you know? So I think it's not just a one conversation thing, it's just your approach is the best way I can say and explain it.
There's been a couple weeks this week where I think you guys have been in midweek and not exactly sure which quarterback you're going to get.
Yeah.
Maybe like an either or, but this time you're going to get probably. How do they do that? How do they work that rotation? And just what are the challenges of what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I think the offense is similar with both. I think, you know, obviously one's a little more experienced and has played in a lot more games. I think, you know, he doesn't run quite as much. You know, 15, I thought, has done some really good things for him. He was a spark for him in probably 2-3 games ago when he came in against Illinois. So, yes, they present different challenges, but overall, the offense is similar. It isn't like it's completely different offense. So, you know, I think it's awareness of who's in for the players and for the coaches in terms of the calls.
What's your experience been coaching Cal Halliday this year, particularly considering, you know, a guy who's been here, experienced the highs and lows in this program, has still been able to thrive even with a new regime?
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, he's a guy that I enjoy coaching. He doesn't say much, but he is a guy that works really hard, and it's really important to him. And there's a consistency to his performance, and I respect the hell out of him. And you know, like I said, he's been here through a lot of ups and downs, and been a guy that's been able to be counted on. So it's been fun.
Look at the Iowa game. I mean, do you see that? I mean, a lot of people thought it was a breakthrough, but in retrospect, it may seem like an isolated event. I mean, do you see it as something that you guys can again replicate this year, or is it
Yes.
something that, you know, eventually down the road is going to be something you can do week after week?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what gives you the confidence that you can do that?
What gives me the confidence, the staff that we have, the head coach that we have, the players, the core group of guys that are here now and the guys that are coming back, the guys that we've got committed, the guys that we're currently recruiting, all that.